All right, good evening, guys. I hope everybody's doing well for another Thursday edition of Conversations with Commodores. And I've got the former Hoover Buccaneer and Vanderbilt Commodore standout, Joel Caldwell, with me this evening. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, Bernard. How are you?
I'm doing just great, and I appreciate you making some time this evening. And for those of you who don't know Joel, he's a Birmingham guy, and he's come back to our community, practices law on the good side of the law. That's what I do too. And Joel and I have collaborated a little bit, and I'm so glad to be getting him this evening on Conversations with Commodores. And if you will, Joel, just tell the folks a little bit about your background, and then we'll just get started.
Well, like Bernard said, Joel Caldwell played at Vanderbilt from 2005, 2009, graduated, and then went to law school after that. And now I'm a practice attorney in Birmingham, Alabama.
Well, it is, guys, if you don't know where Joel went to high school, Hoover High School in Hoover, which is a suburb of Birmingham, it's one of the 7A powerhouse football programs in Alabama and has been for many, many years. And just to give you an idea, Joel, approximately how many state championships in the last 25 years, 6 and 7A, has the school garnered?
I want to say at least 10. When I was there, we won three in a row.
Yeah. Well, that is, guys, it is, they've had countless number of guys play on the high school level, go on to the college level, and some even into the pros. They were so popular many years ago, they even had their own MTV show called Two A Days. I'm sure some of you guys may have caught that. That was predated Joel's time, but that, I forget what years it covered, but that was a while ago. Well, I want to get started I want to stay in Birmingham for a little bit, Joel, because as most of us did, we had success on the high school, junior high, and high school levels. But most of us didn't play in such a powerhouse type of a football program. One of the largest high schools in the state. And in comparison, a lot of guys who've been on our show have come from small high schools or small towns, and they've been the standout player. But you were amongst many stars, many standouts in those formative years. What was that like being part of such a well-established program, a well-oiled machine that every year the state title, or it was not considered a successful year?
Well, it was great. I think football at a very early age teaches you discipline. And so really at Hoover, they had already kind of established a program that, we always want to compete for state championships. And so when I got to varsity sophomore year, it was kind of like, okay, this is what you're going to do. And we had early morning workouts. Then we went to class, and we had meetings immediately after class, and we had practice. So I used to joke around with my friends. I used to see the sun rise and fall at Hoover. And my time at Hoover really helped, prepare me for the next level in college, because in some aspects, we were like a small junior college program, the way we ran things. And so it was a great experience. And I just really did enjoy my time in high school.
You're a sophomore at about age 15, going on to 16. But before that, I know that your brother, who's 4 years older, also went through the program and came to Vanderbilt, and we'll get to Jason in a few minutes. But was there any added pressure that you felt you had to? I don't know whether it was made up in your mind or family pressure, whatever it was. If anything, I've got to follow in his steps and succeed like he did. Or did you not feel that at all, and you're just making your own path and you're going to be your own man, whatever it is that you end up doing?
No, it was definitely added pressure, to the point where I think that helped make me the man I am today. Because not only did I have my middle brother Jason, I had my oldest brother John, and so he also played at Hoover, was a great running back, walked on to Alabama, and then Jason. And so Jason did very well not only in football, but he graduated high school with a 4.0. And so with me kind of being the youngest, always heard, are you going to be like your brothers? Are you going to be, are you going to live up to that? So I literally grew up with a chip on my shoulder, because I was so much younger and so much smaller than them. And they had kind of established and made a well-known name for themselves. And it was like, oh, you're just a runt coming along. So it was definitely out of pressure. I definitely had a chip on my shoulder growing up.
Well, what's the age difference between you and John, the oldest?
6 years, and then Jason's 4 years.
Okay. And so you're a freshman when Jason's a senior, or was he already gone by the time you got to Hoover?
He had graduated. So when I started as a freshman, he was a freshman in college.
And how many state rings did John end up with?
0. Hoover wasn't the powerhouse then.
How many
Yeah.
did Jason end up with?
1.
And how many 1, 2, 3 did you end up with?
3. 3.
Well, there's some bragging rights right there, but I bet I can see that. I mean, I was on the opposite end. I'm the oldest of the 3 brothers. And so my youngest brother, David, who you know is my law partner, and we all played the same position. And for about 9 years at our high school down in Dothan, Northview High School, we were the quarterback for, I think, 7 of those 9 years on the varsity. So I'm sure by the time my youngest brother came through, he was tired of hearing about Robert and Bernard and all what they had done. And he forged his own path, made his own records, set his own. And I'm sure there was some of that drive in him, like I'm hearing from you. That's probably that chip on that shoulder you're referring to.
Yeah, most definitely.
Well, you win 3 titles in 4 years of high school. At what point, maybe this was early, I don't know what point of your process did you start in your mind thinking, I want to play on the next level. I want to play college.
Well, I think it was always a lifetime dream. One of my best friends growing up played at Alabama, Matthew Goodell. He was a receiver, and so we met in Sunday school. Of course, my brothers we all went to the same church growing up, and so just my group of friends, my clique of friends, we always talked about college football. We love watching game day, and so it was always a dream to play college football, and on top of that, to play in the SEC. Because growing up, you're exposed to that. In Alabama, there's no pro football team. The professional sports, in our opinion, is college football, and you can attest to that fact.
I was going to say the only pro team that I jokingly refer to is about 45 miles to the west of your high school in Tuscaloosa. Well, let me ask you from this standpoint, as a sophomore, you see all those seniors sign their letters of intent. That's a huge day on the Hoover campus every spring, signing day or whatever y'all called it. Then as a junior, all your buddies who are a year ahead of you, they're all signing. And as you're heading into your senior year, again, you may not have felt any pressure because you were confident in what you were doing and what you had accomplished and were going to accomplish. Or maybe there was pressure that was out there. Hey, I got to get that scholarship to that school that I really want to go to. So take us into the mindset of a senior at Hoover High School where it's just, they seem to be all the time signing scholarships to one school or another.
Yeah, well, I'll flash forward. Well, let me backtrack. I always knew I wanted to play college football in the SEC, but I didn't even know what a scholarship was until going into my eighth grade year when Jason, my middle brother, got a scholarship. I remember the phone call and my parents been super excited. And then I was like, I want one of those. And so for me in high school, like school came to me pretty easy. The biggest thing to me, I think that also kept me on the right track was football. Because all I did was it was schoolwork, and then it was football, indoor track, outdoor track. So I kind of say I was a 3-sport athlete. And so for me, I always want to get a scholarship. That was my goal from freshman year of high school. That was my plan, to get a college football scholarship. So that pressure really started early on. And that's what I was like, I'm coming to high school. I'm going to do well, play, and get a college football scholarship.
But what a great experience you had as an 8th grader, seeing your older brother. You got a front row seat to see how the family's reacting, how your brother is acting, and how just what a great, I'm not going to call it relief, but what a great experience for everybody. He's not only going to go to college for free and play football, but he's going to the best conference in the country. And he's been arguably the best academic school in the conference. So what a cool experience for you as an 8th grader. I bet you were bursting with pride watching all of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, take us into some of those conversations, if you will, the ones that you want to share with you and John, who played at Alabama, and your brother Jason, who played at Vanderbilt. Here you are you're probably seen as just the little punk, third brother, little dragging around following us. But now you're starting to come into your own because you're soon into high school. So, what were those conversations, that interaction with the three brothers about all of that?
Well, I mean, I can just say they used to help me train. I mean, going out with older, more athletic, bigger, stronger guys, we used to always like lift weights together. I mean, I couldn't lift what they can lift, run together, do exercise regimens together. And then, so that really just helped a lot as far as my development goes. So I can say on the field. And then they just always kept me motivated, always kept me motivated. They always was, I think, my biggest cheerleaders, besides them, my parents.
I was just getting ready to say that family motivation, particularly from older brothers, kind of setting the tone or setting the bar real high. You probably didn't need a lot of motivation. It sounds like it was coming from not only here in your heart, but here in your head, seeing what can be achieved by what they've done. And Joel, let's talk a little bit about Jason for a minute. Who did he play for at Vanderbilt? Who was his head coach?
Well, he started freshman year as Woodenhofer.
Mm-hmm.
And then after Woodenhofer, Bobby Johnson came on board and he played for Bobby for the next, I want to say 4 years because he got redshirted his freshman year.
And then when you came on board a few years later, who were you playing for?
Bobby Johnson.
And who recruited you? What coach had the territory?
Coach Caldwell, great last name, I want to admit. And now, Coach, great guy, great recruiter. And, he's at Clemson with great success. So I just wish him the very best.
Isn't that unique? You got Coach Caldwell recruiting a Caldwell. That's pretty cool.
Indeed.
And did he come to see any of your games, or when did you first get on the radar for him?
Well, heading to my senior year, Vanderbilt had offered me. And so he had come, I want to say, we had one of the camps, I forgot the camp, but it was at Meadowbrook High School. And Coach Caldwell came and recruited me, and he kept recruiting me. So he came to a few games. I remember, I think he came down for the Meadowbrook game when we played them because they're in our region. Sure. I want to say he came down for the Spain Park game.
Well, I know that with those games, there were a lot of athletes to be recruited. So I'm sure he had a lot of other coaches he knew sitting in the stands or wherever he was watching the game. What other schools made it onto your radar that you had considered, if any other schools were there?
Well, UAB offered me a scholarship, Southern Miss as well, and then Troy and Army also offered me a scholarship.
And who was the UAB coach at that time?
I want Auburn's Auburn, Bill, help me out. Pat Dye. I want to say Pat Dye. Am I correct?
No, it may be. Now, Watson Brown helped to start the program, and he was my coach at Vanderbilt. So I was curious if it was, but I couldn't remember when Watson had stepped down and just as AD.
He won the Heisman at Auburn.
Pat Sullivan.
Pat Sullivan, that was it. Pat Sullivan.
Very good. Coach Sullivan, who recently passed away, was always involved in college sports for many, many years at Samford and UAB and other places. But did you ever consider any of the other schools, or was the fact that Jason up there, was that an influence for you?
Well, yeah, it was a strong influence. Of course, I considered the other schools, but for me, it was always SEC. And then you couldn't beat the academics at Vanderbilt. I mean, you cannot beat academics.
You're an academic-oriented guy. Had you decided early on that law school was going to be in your future, or were you just kind of an open book and just trying to figure all that out academically?
No, honestly, law school, my dad kind of taught to me going to my senior year at Vanderbilt because I got redshirted. And so I did well enough academically where I could, had other options besides just going into the workforce. And so my dad really encouraged me. He was like, Joe, you're smart enough. And he kind of saw something in me at an early age. It was like, you were always the one who, I don't want to say, but had a lot of mouth, so to speak. He said, you're always the one who debate, you never really back down from anything. So he kind of encouraged me to go to law school. And I took the LSAT, I want to say, my senior year of college, right before I was about to graduate, December of '09, and did pretty well. And so I went to law school after that.
You happen to follow what I did and take it the morning of a home game and not tell your head coach you were going to take it at the team meeting? Did you happen to do that? Yeah, that's a way to not get yourself on the field, by the way.
Yeah.
That's another story for another day. But did you, I guess you had been up to see Vanderbilt play. You'd been to the campus, I assume, during high school, seeing your brother play. And did you get to take an official visit where you weren't with your parents and just kind of did one of those official visits to the campus?
Yeah, I got to take an official visit. I think signing day, that we didn't have the early signing day period when I played. I don't think you did either. So signing day was I think the first Wednesday in February. So it was a big deal. So I want to say I went up in January or December sometime, but my brother was my host. So
okay.
Yeah,
I was going to say, now the statute of limitations is long gone. We need a story. You got to share who else was part of your host weekend. Where did y'all go? What kind of good things did you do? And remember, your folks and other parents may be watching this later on.
Yeah, I remember it was quite a few people. I want to say Eric Davis. They were older guys who I played with. George Smith, and I remember quite a few other guys in my brother's roommates who were all awesome guys. So I know we had a meal that night. I got to spend time with my position coach at the time, who was Jamie Bryant. We went out to a few nice places downtown. I'll just leave it at that. And it was just a great time. I actually think we had a nice dinner on Peabody, and it was really nice. It was really nice. It was enjoyable.
Remember, were there any, when you came in, were there other recruits also in that weekend? You remember?
I do remember, I want to say Duran Koger, he played cornerback with me, and maybe Chris Johnson. Chris is from Birmingham. I think he may have been on that weekend, but I'm not completely sure.
And was your brother living at Carmichael at the time or somewhere else?
Towers.
In the Towers?
Mm-hmm.
Rest in peace, Towers.
I know. Such great memories there.
Yeah, those things need to come down decades ago. And so that visit, not that you necessarily had to take that visit, but did you already know by then you were coming and that you were going to be signing with the school, with Vanderbilt?
Yeah, I knew. I committed back in October, and I think now, gotta check the archives, I want to say, but I want to say I was the second commit. I know Mackenzie Adams was our first commit from 2005, and I think I was the second commit from 2005.
And who was your position coach going into your freshman year at Vanderbilt?
Oh, Jamie Bryant. He was my position coach the entire time I was there.
And did Coach Johnson spend more time with the offense or the defense, or did he just kind of float back and forth and let his assistants kind of control what they needed to do?
Well, I think he floated back and forth, but I do know Coach Johnson did come to a lot of our position meetings. And I think because he played defensive back in college, he probably had a soft spot. So he was in a lot of our meetings a lot of times. But I think he definitely did float back and forth.
Well, that's pretty cool, because a lot of guys will say they didn't spend much time with the head coach, maybe a center when you had a coach who was a quarterback coach or something back, now he's the head coach. A lot of guys would have told me they didn't get to spend much time with the head coach unless they screwed up, and then they really spent time with the head coach when they heard about it. But that's pretty cool that he would spend time in your position.
And Coach Johnson actually wrote one of my letter recommendations for law school. So man, he really looked out.
Fantastic. Well, Joel, let's talk about how prepared were you, and when did you realize it? When you had gotten to Vanderbilt and you're going into that first fall, that late summer, right before school starts, when the freshmen report, how prepared did you think that you were coming out of Hoover? And then when did you realize everybody here is an outstanding athlete and it's going to be some serious competition?
Well, Hoover helped, but it's nothing like the next level. I mean, it's high school, great powerhouse, but I think it helped discipline me as far as, you have to make time to practice, but also do your work because you're a student athlete. And at Vanderbilt, you're definitely going to be a student athlete. Um, I would say just the competition fall count, freshman year fall count, whole different speed, bigger guys, just the mental intelligence on the field was just a whole nother level, just how guys flew around. And so I remember my freshman year, I got redshirted, but I still had to travel. And just, I remember that first game, it was like speed, speed, speed all over the field. And so I think it was early on.
Well, I was going to say some guys talk about the first time, for example, they had to cover a Boo Mitchell when they're playing DB, or they get hit by a 230-pound fullback right in the chest. You know, it's one of those moments like, wow, that I got to step it up. I mean, for me, playing scout team, and I've got All-America Chris Gaines on the other side, and there's so many times when Chris, he'd pull up at the last minute, but it was just, he could have ended my career right there if he wanted to, just because of how athletic he was. And that was kind of my welcome to SEC football on the practice field. How organized were you? I suspect you were pretty organized, but how long did it take for you to adjust to the academic rigors, the athletic rigors, getting your rest, and still, you know, eating properly, that whole mentality? And I know you had Jason there, but you're your own guy. Yeah. He's not doing what you're doing.
I want to say it took me a year to really adjust academically. Vanderbilt did a great job. We were one of the first classes where they allowed incoming freshmen to take summer school. Mm-hmm. So I was able to get 6 hours in June. Yeah, I took 2 classes in June and then came back home in July of 2005. And so that helped a lot. But then, you know, for the academics tough, and then you play football. And so it took me like a good year to kind of just get my bearings, because it's a huge learning curve that you're not prepared for. And it's nothing that can prepare you for.
Were you told you were going to be redshirted, or was that news broken to you at some point early on?
I never was told. I think towards the end of the year, I guess around LSU game when I didn't play, Coach Bryant pulled me and one of my fellow teammates aside, Ryan Hamilton, was like, look, y'all might end up playing in this game against LSU, but just want to give you a heads up. And then I think if you didn't play, you start getting an assumption that, hey, I'm probably going to get redshirted.
So they didn't come out and tell you until the LSU game that you even had a thought about that?
Yeah, because I still traveled with the team. Mm-hmm. And so usually if you get redshirted, you don't travel on the away games and you don't dress out. I still dressed out and for every home game, and I still travel with the team my freshman year.
Well, they probably needed you as an emergency after.
Exactly.
I don't know if it's still maybe like 4 games you can play or 3 games. I don't know what the requirement was at that time.
Well, see, now it's like that. I think now if you play, you can play up to 4 games and still get your red shirt. When I played, you play 1 down, your red shirt's gone. 1 down, and you lose your red shirt.
You're right. Well, how did you take that when you're being told by Coach Bryant during a game or right before the game, you may not be playing, and probably the undertone is you might not be playing the rest of this year. I mean, did it hit you like a ton of bricks? Were you accepting of it? Did it bother you?
No, I mean, to me, no, it didn't bother me at all, because I had upperclassmen next to me in the locker. When I first started playing my freshman year, Moses Simigi was right next to me. He was number 30, and I was 29. He was like, red shirt's one of the best things you can do, because coming out of high school, I was still extremely small. I mean, I was scrawny. And so it allowed me a time to get my body to adjust, because some people you develop differently. And so some guys were much bigger than I was, and I was small. So it got me a chance to adjust, in the classroom as well, too. It got me the opportunity to study more without having to just necessarily focus on the game. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it was kind of a blessing.
Well, I'm not going to equate being redshirted is similar to someone who's hurt and can't play the season. But from a mindset, I've often heard, if you allow yourself to go that way, you don't feel part of the team. even though you're practicing, even though you're traveling, some guys have reported or told me when they're redshirted, it's like they're being yanked off of the active roster, so to speak. And those guys that are hurt and having to rehab during the year who aren't traveling, you're only going to see them maybe at the dorm. You might see them on a different schedule if you'll happen to pass each other at Magoogan because they're rehabbing, but you're coming in for lift or meetings. Did you ever have that type of mentality? And some guys don't. That, gosh, I don't feel like I'm still part of this program or this team because now I know I'm not on the active, 40-man squad or a 70-man squad for a SEC game.
I never felt that way. My year, I think we had a pretty large signing class. It was 25 of us. Mm-hmm. The only two, I think, who played was Brian Humfeld and Earl Bennett. And so the rest of my class, who I came in with, we pretty much all got redshirted, I believe. And so, and you're still participating. You're still in the locker room. You're still practicing. And then, too, Vanderbilt's such a small, kind of intimate campus that you see people all the time. And then with football, you see those guys all the time. So I never felt that way. I actually thought it was a good thing for us. And then, too, like for my class, it allowed us to be pretty close as well.
Well, that was the other thing I was going to say. I got redshirted my freshman year, as did most of my class. A few guys played, but that's exactly right. That it allowed us. Now we played on scout team, the guys on the offense, and so we really kind of worked as a unit, and we got closer in that regards. So there are some real benefits. You're right. Academically adjusting, athletically having to adjust, and depending on what position, some positions are harder than others to acclimate to, particularly in the SEC.
True.
Well, those first few games that you did get to play in, what were the butterflies like? I know you've been used to playing with big crowds at Hoover, up to 20,000 or so, give or take, maybe even a little bit more. But it's not Alabama, it's not Georgia, it's not going to LSU and the like, where you've got up to 100,000. Did that even register with you? Did you have butterflies, or were you just ready to do what you needed to do?
I think anyone, I don't care how long you play the game, you have butterflies or you get nervous somewhat. But after that first play, it's just like, okay, we're here. We're locked and loaded. Because the first one, after my redshirt freshman year, we played Michigan. And I was, unfortunately, I dislocated my elbow during fall camp, so my coach held me back. And so the very next game that I played and I started was against Alabama. And so it was a great feeling. And I was not up against my best friend growing up. I kind of alluded to him earlier, Matt Goodell. So it was like our dream. God had, fulfilled our childhood dream. He was playing receiver. I was cornerback. And so it was great. But after that first play, it was like, okay, we're here.
Yeah.
Let's get to it.
You could have been playing Spain Park for all you cared. It was
exactly.
Time to get it on. Where was that game played?
Tuscaloosa.
And how many Caldwell family members made the trip west?
Probably 35. I had to get extra tickets. It was a lot of family.
Oh, that's
which
awesome.
I love.
I meant to ask you, there's 4-year difference between you and Jason. Did y'all ever overlap maybe your freshman year at Vanderbilt?
Yeah, so his redshirt senior year was my freshman year.
And tell us, what was that like, getting to play with your brother for the first time on such a level?
It was great. We actually competed pretty hard in practice. We really went at, because he played receiver and I played defensive back. So I was like, well, I'm gonna get better. So that was great. It was also great just having him there. It kind of helped me adjust because I got a older family member on campus already. And so that was encouraging. Sometimes, he'll let me take his car every now and then, which was because we couldn't have cars as freshmen on Vandy's campus. So it was really good.
The experience. My youngest, there's a 3-year gap between me and my middle brother. And I always thought he might come up to Vanderbilt, but he ended up at Swanee. But I got to go see him play a couple of times. But I bet that was a good experience. I'm sure your family enjoyed coming up to Nashville or going wherever the games may be that year.
Yeah, they loved it. They loved it.
Very cool. Well, tell me, Joel, what was it about the Vanderbilt experience that you truly cherish even to now? You've been out more than 10 years. You're getting to be an old man. And what experiences that you really cherish now?
I mean, it's honestly, it's tons of them. So I try to be as brief as possible, but I miss my teammates. You're so used to being around those guys. Once you start, like I enrolled in summer of 2005, you're around those guys so much that to the point where it's just like they're your extended family. And so you like, of course, I love playing football. I love the games, but it's just like you don't have that anymore because everyone's kind of spread all over across the country, and everyone's going on with their lives. And so you're kind of used to kind of being in this bubble, so to speak, kind of how the NBA is now. And so it kind of doesn't hit you until it's over with. And so I do miss that a lot. I don't think about the tackles or games I played or what I messed up. I just kind of miss like the fellowship I had with those guys. And it's like it was a blessing because there's never a time where I walked into Rand, Diamond Hall, or Hendricks, no, McGugan, and didn't see someone I knew. On campus, didn't see someone I knew. Or just like come back to your dorm room. I used to leave my door open. Now I used to have my teammates, in my dorm room or, just being around them. Because, it's the fellowship you have with those guys that lasts a lifetime. And so that's what I think that was a great experience for me.
Well, who was your freshman roommate?
Mackenzie Adams.
Who?
Mackenzie Adams.
And then after, when you moved over to Carmichael, did you have a roommate at all after that?
Well, Mackenzie, and then I had a Tower single for a couple years. And then when I moved over I lived at, I want to say Tolman, if I remember. Not Tolman, it was Lewis, James Williams.
Gotcha. And how often now do you communicate with any of those guys? Do you ever get a chance to?
Well, definitely at homecoming. And then I still talk to some of my, real close friends, teammates quite often still to this day.
Well, it's every single ball player who I've had these conversations with. Some remember some of the on-field good and bad more than others. But to a player, to a man, it's the friendships. It's the memories that you made on and off campus. The time, the 4 or 5 years, 6 years for some, just fly by.
It does.
It doesn't feel like it because when you're putting in the time, when you're doing all the running, when you're doing all the weights or film study, that goes by slowly. But the time, all of a sudden it's time to graduate and then you're done. Your experience for the most part's done.
Yeah, just a funny story. I remember my last semester, I took 3 hours and I studied for the LSAT at the same time because I wanted to play my last year of eligibility. And then when I graduated in December, I got an email that said, "Hey, Joe, congratulations. You've met the requirements for graduation." And it said, "Please be out the dorm in 2 weeks." Ooh. And it was like a sadness just came over me like, this is it. Like, I am done. I am out of here. Mm-hmm. And that's what it dawned on me. Like, it just came so quickly, and it doesn't feel that way when you're in it. But when I got that graduation email, of course, it should be a time to rejoice and be thrilled. I'm getting a Vanderbilt degree. I came in here and got what I plan on doing, getting my degree. But it was just like a sadness that came over me. I don't know how other people may have felt, but when I got that email, I was like, it's over with. And I wasn't even thinking about, oh yeah, you did graduate and you did it on time. It was just like, I'm done. I'm out of here.
Well, it certainly sounds like you enjoyed your experience on campus. I can't say everybody I've talked with had the same reaction. Some couldn't get out of there quick enough, but, and everybody experiences it differently. After you graduated, did you still feel as enamored and enjoy college football as you did during your active playing days? Or did you go through a period like a decompression period where you just didn't care for the sport, didn't follow it or go to games for a while?
I enjoyed it, but I think I had a much more critical outlook on it. It's not critical, but I used to go and watch the game to see what type of personnel they're in, what coverage they're running. Like I was still watching from that point, like kind of like an analyst, not as a fan. And so it took me like a year or two to get back to like fan mode because I was like, okay, they're in 10 personnel, they're 11 personnel. What's the secondary in? Because I play defensive back. Like what type of coverage they're doing, what type of defense they're doing, just that type of stuff. I was much more critical in like how I looked at the game. And so it took me a while to just become like a fan again and like, oh man, just watch it for the enjoyment.
And during that time period, when you're watching ball games with folks who never played the sport, were they enamored with what you had to say, or were they telling you to shut up and just root for a team?
Oh, I just kept my mouth shut because half the time, like even when I was in law school, I went to Alabama for law school, so I went to a few of the games, and in the student section, because I got student section tickets, a lot of people were inebriated, so it wasn't really enjoyable. So I couldn't really take it in like I wanted to.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, for me, the version of game tape and film that we always watched was from the perspective of behind center, not the sideline view, the 50-yard line where everybody, the fans like to, but for us trying to learn the game and the spacing and the routes and the coverages, it's from the end zone.
Yeah, that's exactly true.
Today, if and when I go to college games, I prefer sitting in the end zone. And people who go with me are just, what are you talking about? And so we sit there for, I show them why. That's just me. But others obviously want to sit, in the midfield, be able to watch it that way. That's just the way I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Well, when did you first go back? I guess, did you go to law school right after Vanderbilt?
Yeah, so I graduated December of 2009. And so law school, starts the following fall. So I probably was home for a few months and then I started. Well, Alabama had a program where I could start in May of 2010 instead of the fall and take one class. So I went ahead and started in May of 2010.
Oh,
so
wow.
I kind of went right through.
You got to jump on it then.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, Joel, you've been out of law school 7 or so years now. And as you get older and you get wiser and you look back at the experience, and when people are talking about, hey, you used to play at Vanderbilt, how cool was that? What kind of response do you give them? What are some of what makes you smile when you're thinking back on those times?
Well, it was a blessing. I mean, Vanderbilt was a blessing for me and my entire family. I was fortunate, me and my middle brother got full scholarships, and it was just a great time. When I was there, we had gone to a bowl game, actually won, I think, since 1982, I want to say.
Yep.
And then just academically, like, you don't realize how much weight the degree carries until after you graduate. And then you're like, wow, And then Vanderbilt's a beautiful campus, and it's in Nashville, which now that I've gone back to Nashville, I can't even recognize it's grown so much.
Oh my gosh, it's just exploded. But the thing about the Vanderbilt experience, this is not new to me or from me, but I've often heard, and maybe this was a slogan that Vanderbilt has had, it's those 4 or 5 years prepare you for the next 40 or 50 years. And I think it's so true. It really, I don't think any other school in the SEC can really tout the total package of the city of Nashville, being in the SEC, the academic rigors and what all that carries from Vanderbilt. Joel, I'd love to dig into stories and journeys, and you're sharing with us yours, and I appreciate that. Not a lot of people want to share it, but I sure appreciate you doing so.
I'm glad to be on here.
But along the way, you go from being a starter at Hoover and a well-established athlete, and then you get to Vanderbilt, you get redshirted your freshman year, and you're competing with some of the best, the very best in the conference, if not in the country, for your position. What was it about that athletic competition that brought certain fire out of you, the competitive juices? What was that, and how did that play out for you?
You said it. Just when you're competing against the best, you want to show yourself as being the best. And so anyone who plays any type of sports, you love that competitive edge. And then, especially when I play corner and safety, you're going against some of the best athletes on the field. And so for me, it's just like, I've loved this game. I play this game, and hey, I got to cover this guy. I got to be over this guy. I got to make this play. And you're going against the best. I mean, clearly you see the landscape with SEC right now, and they're always competing for the, national title. And so at the time when I was there, the East was the toughest part of the SEC. The West wasn't as competitive as the East was.
You came through, I think, during the Tebow era.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the East was tough. That's right.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Tebow and any other players you may have competed against, who are some of the more memorable games or players or plays that come to mind?
Well, the memorable ones was when I got beat deep a few times. I think, in the negative standpoint, I remember Marcus Montfort, Arkansas. We're in cover 2, and he just blew past me. I do remember tackling Tebow when we played Florida at home, and then I want to say Sidney Rice from South Carolina. I think they had him listed as 6'3", but in real life, I think he was much taller. And he did a stop and go route on me and got behind me, and he made a great catch. So I do remember that. I mean, I'm talking about the bad things, but I think
those are Sunday players you're talking about.
Those, I guess, those that stick out the most when I got beat deep. You're supposed to have a short memory, but years now, I still remember that.
Well, it's the fact you're out there competing against the very best, I think, are the true memories, regardless of the wins and losses. That kind of fades over time, hopefully. But it's just out there. You're playing against, Heisman Trophy winners, guys who are just doing it on Sundays.
Yeah.
And from how does your athletic experiences, how does that translate now into the real world, now that you're a practicing lawyer? Because not every case you have, even though you hope it turns out to be a winner, is not going to be a winner. And if it is, if every one of them, then you're going to be the world's greatest lawyer. And I hope that turns out for you. But the reality is some cases go south. Some lawyers on the other side have an advantage because of home field. You're coming to their territory, so to speak. So what kind of lessons do you use now that you took from your athletic days?
Well, I mean, tons of them. I'm still taking lessons from athletic days. One big thing is when you are in the locker room, you deal with so many different personalities, people from different backgrounds, different mentalities, different mindsets. And so I think anyone who's an athlete, who's played a sport, team sport, learns how to deal with people. I mean, to go along, you got to get along. And so I don't think I know, being around other people with different mindsets and expose yourself, you learn how to work with people and get along with people, because you end up being miserable. Yeah. And then in the law profession, it's really about people skills. You got to be able to talk to people. You got to be able to talk to your clients. You got to be able to talk to judges, and you got to be able to talk to opposing attorneys. I mean, that's part of it. And so that is a big testament to playing football, playing sports. And another, just dealing with adversity. I mean, everything in your life doesn't go your way. Just like I talked to you about giving up plays when I was playing, you deal with adversity, but you supposed to bounce back. Everything doesn't come to you on a silver platter. And so you got to be able to bounce back and so to speak, have a short memory. Just because you didn't make the play, or just because this case didn't go your way this time, doesn't mean you're a bad football player, nor does it mean you're a bad lawyer. You just get up and go again.
It's nothing replaces that hard work and teamwork. As a defensive back, have you ever had a game where you haven't communicated with your fellow DBs or the linebackers about what's going on?
Heck yeah. Yeah.
You're not out there on an island, just like in the practice of law, even though Joel and I do somewhat similar type of work. It's a team effort. You've got paralegals, you've got co-counsel, you've got assistants, you've got all kinds of people you got to rely upon. And so that's how that teamwork and those athletic experiences certainly equate into real world these days. Gosh, Joel, I sure appreciate your time tonight. This has been so fun.
I appreciate you letting me on, because I love Vanderbilt, great school, and I love talking about it. And so it's been a great talking about it.
Well, excellent. Before we get out of here, two last things. I want you to give shout outs to any of your buddies who you used to run around with back in the day at Vanderbilt who may be watching this later on.
Well, it's tons of them, but Gaston Miller, of course, my brother, Fontaine Harner, um, Larry Smith, Andrew Diamonde, Jared Fagan, Josh Allen. It's a lot of them.
Well,
Gabe Hall, Curtis Gatewood, all those guys.
keep on going. Well,
But no, I also want to say this. I think the Vanderbilt community knows that Otis Washington unfortunately passed away. Otis was, I want to say, a fifth-year senior, and I met him when him and my brother came to our house when I was still in high school. And I had a year to get to know Otis, and Otis was a great guy, and I just wish my condolences for his family. He was a magnificent guy, magnificent person, one of the funniest guys you ever meet, and I just want to wish my condolences to his family.
Well, thank you for saying that. I was going to mention his name and his memory, and several guys have put some very kind comments in the group. We've lost two former Commodores in this past month. Thon Anderson was a teammate of mine back in the day, a fellow DB, one of the nicest men you'd ever be around, one of the most fierce competitors as well. But thank you for bringing that up, Joel. Any of your buddies who you just mentioned who are on Facebook and aren't in our group, please encourage them, invite them to join us. And the last thing before we get out of here, Chris Griffin, who heads up the Black and Gold Club, he's the director. He was a teammate of Joel's. And Alfonso Harvey, who's the football liaison. You're going to be hearing from those guys a lot in our football group here. There's going to be a watch party for the LSU game this Saturday. He's going to put in a post where you can sign up. You have to register ahead of time. You just put your name and email and all that. But they said that the one from Texas A&M last week was a lot of fun. So I hope to see you guys at that this weekend.
And I want to give a shout out to Fonzo. He's my chapter brother and helped place me for the most illustrious frat in the world, Omega Psi Phi fraternity.
Excellent. Well, guys, have a great weekend. You're down.
Go Doors.